Welcome to a magical snowy morning in the wilderness coast of Alaska. Whew, it's a little slippery. It's middle of March and we've had a lot of sort of spring feeling weather with no snow, but just last night it snowed a few inches, snowed a little bit yesterday, and so we're back to magical winter wonderland, light fluffy snow. It's always super cool experiencing snow on the coast. I'm just coming over to check on the Sailboat, which is anchored up over here somewhere. Everything's getting buried. There she is, looking good. I have to say, after living on the beach for a winter now, most of a winter, it's my first time living on the coast like this, where there's no roads, no cars, just boats, beach, forest. It's really super nice. I've really enjoyed the way that the snow, I don't know, I guess I haven't really thought about this, but there's something about how the snow, the tide is erasing the snow. So whether it snowed 2 feet overnight, there'd still be this beach here where you can walk and work and do whatever that has no snow on it. Sometimes it's covered in ice, but it's like the tide is there plowing the yard in some regards. The ocean is my snowplow. Anyhow, the unique things that you discover living out here. Let me show you the view there with the boat, the fresh snow, pretty beautiful. When it snows quite a bit in the winter here, some of it just lays on the surface of the water. So you can see it's not really ice, it's just snow that collected on the surface. So on this snowy morning in March in Alaska, I actually have a message I wanted to share with you, and I wrote it down because it came to me this morning sitting by the window as the wood stove was warming up, drinking my tea. And I wanted to tell you what I think is the most dangerous thing you can do in life, especially if you're around the age of 40 or mid-30s or older. If you're younger than that, I cut you some slack. But anyhow, I'm actually just going to read this. I figured that'll be easiest than trying to remember what came to me. The most dangerous thing in life is living out of alignment with your nature. It undermines the foundation of your life and will never let you rest in peace. If one lives out of alignment, it is like tricking yourself. You then live in a state of fear of discovering your true self, because that will reveal the trickery you've played against your very soul. Many people live in fear of coming face to face with themselves. Not those ducks out there. Hear them quacking. Many people live in fear of coming face to face with themselves. Fear of solitude, peace, quiet, meditation, or stillness. What will be discovered there? The truth. The truth will be discovered there. And what is that? It's often the painful realization that one has forsaken the self. The ego has run life like a rental car, no care for the soul. The purpose of life is to be the most complete, whole, authentic, integrated, and evolved version. If I can turn the page. Of yourself, whatever that may be. A life in alignment with that purpose honors it and moves on the path. A life misaligned looks like chasing external objects, jobs, money, relationships, titles, experiences, achievements. that are not mileposts on the path of self-discovery and unique expression of the kernel of you. A dandelion is meant to be a dandelion. This is simple. It should not strive to be a lily or some other flower. You are meant to be you, not someone else. The art of living is painting your own unique creation. A life not lived in alignment is not really a life lived. It's more a life avoided. It's a blank canvas, never painted on. The painter was distracted with other things, then became afraid to even look at the paints, the brushes, the empty canvas. Life is meant to be lived. Your life, not someone else's. You are the only one that can do it. Not sure what that'll mean to you, but it's been certainly a journey for me in life, that message. And I think when you get to my age, which I'm 42 now, it's kind of like you don't really have excuses anymore. If you haven't started figuring out how to live for yourself, and I don't mean in a selfish way, but to live in a way that honors who you really are, then you better start figuring it out, because it's really the only life worth living, really. And I'd say that at a first glance it can sound like kind of a selfish thing. I'm sitting here telling you need to live for yourself, but really this is a message I'm telling myself, and it's not to be selfish and disregard others, but it's to figure out what your unique painting is. Figure out what paints you have, what your canvas is, what your brushes are, what opportunities you have in life. So maybe you were born into a family that has a farm, or around here it might be commercial fishing. That's one of the things you have available. That's one of the paints you have. Maybe you have an aptitude for adventure. That's one of your paints. It's one of your brushes. Maybe you absolutely love the wilderness, like me. That's just one of the personality traits that I have. And it doesn't do anybody any good for me to go around trying to live a life that defies my very nature. And this can be tricky. I would say the ego mind or conditioning or societal expectations don't really tend to care very much what your unique soul's expression looks like. Not always like that. It's funny, I have kids. They're now 5 to 12 or 11, and I've watched them grow up and seen the way that what I would say the soul of a human is freely expressed in a very young child that hasn't had any kind of significant trauma. They express themselves completely, without reservation, without censorship, and it's immature, sure, but it's wholesome, it's pure. And then as they grow up, different kids at different ages, this happens, but you can observe. There's a bunch of seals over there on the rock, but you can observe them start to take on their conditioning or expectations of others. And usually it would start with their parents, how their parents want them to be, or how their friends want them or think they should be, or how they just, sometimes they generate this themselves. They look and they see what other people are doing or not doing, and they decide what they should or should not be doing in some kind of relation to that. And these, I believe, are departures from their well, potentially departures. They can potentially be departures from their own natural expression. And that's good, and it's right, and it's part of living in a society and having relationships, is learning how to adapt your own personality to the conditions you're in. But very often I see in others, and have seen in myself, how this attempt to adapt or become something that isn't necessarily a unique and pure, authentic, inspired expression of yourself goes too far. It's really easy for it to take over much of your life, especially when you're young, in your teens and early 20s, when you're just trying to figure out what life is like, who you can be, what's available to you, what do you admire, what do you want to be, or maybe you're driven by fears or things that you don't want to be. Maybe your parents are alcoholics and you are coping with the struggles related to that, and it drives you to move away from something. Look at the snow on the ground. Well, this was snow on the water, and then the tide has dropped, and the snow is ending up on these rocks. It's really quite something. I really love this little texture and pattern in here. Cool is that? So anyhow, I was saying that it's easy to get drawn away from your own unique expression. As a child, you might express yourself purely, innocently, authentically. It's kind of the only thing you know to do. Then you grow up and you start to take on expectations, or you see ideals, cultural ideals, or maybe your parents pressure you to be away. Maybe you pressure yourself. Maybe you're running away from something or towards something, whatever it may be. There's the temptation for life to start moving away from your own unique expression towards something that is externally driven. And this is what I think is the most dangerous thing for a life. If your life is your unique expression, as you have come into this mind and body experience, you come in with a unique set of characteristics, experiences, inclinations, abilities, aptitudes, whatever. And my opinion is that the purpose of our lives is to express whatever that is as wholly and completely as possible. And nobody can tell you what that is because they don't know. There's only one source to find that information of what you are meant to be, or what your purpose is, or what your life should look like. And that source is inside of you. If you're religious, you might say it's God's voice inside of you, depending on your religion. But I think no matter what religion or ideology or philosophy you ascribe to, it's a universal thing that I think it's a universal thing, I guess, in all of my reading and studying. I think it all kind of comes back to, you have to learn to listen to your inner voice. You have to eliminate distractions and the busyness and all those things that keep you from hearing your inner voice. And you have to start rebuilding the confidence to not only hear the voice, your intuition, your inner guides, God speaking to you, whatever you want to call it. You have to learn to hear it, and then you have to build confidence to act on it. This is not something a kid has to do. They don't even question it. They want to do something, they don't really even see an alternative unless they're driven by fears or traumas or strange social situations, of course. But let's think about a kid playing in the woods here in Alaska, in the wilderness, free of worry and concern. They obviously just express their innate desires and energies. And that's what I believe we need to do as adults. If you're in your 20s, teens, I'll cut you a little bit of slack. But if you're like me and you're in your 40s or older, I hope that you can learn or practice or figure out some way to hear your voice inside, to rediscover what it is inside you that is still there, that drove you as a child or called you as a child. That voice that led you into your life, that was not ruled by external forces, expectations, or circumstance. One thing about kids is they don't really worry about very much stuff. They tend to be focused on the present moment and what would be the most fun. And obviously, as you grow up, fun becomes less and less of the driving factor for most of us, and we're called by other things. Let me show you this stick here. Isn't that amazing? I believe it's some type of a worm that eats the wood when it's in the ocean. I don't really know what that is, but it sure is incredible. It's something that I find fairly often is those like worm-eaten driftwood pieces. I don't know if you can hear the eagles on the mic, but so anyhow, the most dangerous thing in life is to live out of alignment with yourself. How do you discover yourself and what is the self? You have to be a little bit childlike and listen to your innate inspirations, passions. I would say desires, but desires are kind of a tricky one. You have to start figuring out what is your unique expression, if you haven't already. For me, it's been a process of discovery. I've obviously lived almost 42 years and been down some paths that were more authentic and some paths that weren't. I'll give you one example is I wanted to become a very successful photographer for various reasons, the motivation for that. But there was certainly a desire to succeed at some level. And a lot of times these external forces that we are running from or to, they're often not very well thought out. I didn't really know what being successful really meant. I didn't have a measuring stick for it. I just was driven by some sort of desire to do that. And it was a wonderful thing in some ways. I had a lot of incredible life experiences because of that drive, that motivation. But it wasn't really in total alignment with myself. And eventually I had the good fortune of reaching some level of success that made me realize that this unthought out idea that happiness was out there somewhere when I reached some level of success in this career, which even talking about it, I realized how silly this is because I didn't know where I was going and I didn't really know why I was going there and I didn't really know what I would get when I got there or if I'd even know when I arrived. Yeah, that sounds really stupid. Kind of was. But thankfully, I had the good fortune of getting close enough, and like everything in my life, I realized that there wasn't something satisfying enough at the end of that road there wasn't nirvana there. It was just another step in the journey of trying to make a better life, I guess. I don't even know. Like, what even is the motivation for that kind of stuff? I honestly don't even know. But it wasn't self-discovery, and it was not in an effort to live in alignment with myself and my soul, which is what I'm talking about here today. And that's the message that I'm trying to share is, if your life is meant to be the most creative and authentic and complete expression of who you are, then the most dangerous thing you can do is live out of alignment with yourself. And what that looks like for most of us is distractions and diversions, doing things that aren't in perfect alignment, doing things that distract us from our own painting, working on someone else's painting, trying to achieve someone else's goal, trying to reach a level of success that your society or conditioning suggests is good, and not spending time with your own paintbrush, and your own paints, and your own canvas. And I see that it's really easy for myself and others to, the more you stay away from your own painting, the more terrified you are to look at it. And this is something that I've recognized, is that there's a lot of people that are living in fear of themselves. They're afraid to be in solitude. They're afraid to be in silence. They're afraid to be alone with themselves without the TV on, or without scrolling social media, or without working on some project, working towards something. They're afraid to just be. And if that's you, if the idea of sitting alone in silence for an hour or two with no devices, no music, no people, and nothing to do is terrifying or uncomfortable, I would just ask you, like, why is that? What is that? What are you afraid of? I guess I don't know, but when people, or when I come across that in people and friends or whatever, I just think it must be they're afraid of coming face to face with reality, the truth of who they are and what they're doing with their life. It's a lot more comfortable to stay distracted and busy, thinking that the next thing that you accomplish is going to somehow ease the pain of your hollow existence. I can only laugh because I'm laughing at myself and how these things that we often spend our life doing and pursuing are just not really well thought out at all. And that's why it's so dangerous. That's why it's the most dangerous thing that you can do, is to not learn to listen to yourself, your inner voice, your inner guidance, God speaking to you in the quiet stillness. Well, I've been talking for like 20 minutes, and obviously I could keep talking about this for a long time, and maybe I'm just going in circles, but I'll wrap it up with a little example that's really pertinent for where I'm at in my life, which is living out here in the coastal wilderness. It's definitely an expression of who I am. This is my unique painting. This is what fits right for me. It's what feels right for me. It's what makes me feel alive. And it has been a challenge to do this in many regards. It's not a normal thing to do. It's not something that is socially it's not something they teach you about in school, what you should do. Hey, if you want to be successful in life, you should not have a job and you should live in the woods. Not that it's portrayed as something terrible in our society, thankfully, but it's not like a career path. It's not success by what I would say most American standards are, really. And I am divorced and have shared custody of kids, and obviously not living in the same town as them is a challenge, and dealing with all of that. And then just the financial uncertainty of it all, and family desires and expectations, and friends' desires and expectations. And there's plenty of little resistances that I could come up with, but it is what feels right for me, and it is incredibly rewarding. I would say every day I'm so grateful for this life that I'm able to live here. I'm grateful to the people that have supported it being possible, and I'm grateful that I was able to break out of the mold that I was living in and do this. And it's how I'm painting my unique expression. It's my painting. It's what fits me. It's what feels right for me. And I know I said I was going to wrap this up, but I have something in this little book here I want to read. It's called The Art of Living, the Classical Manual on Virtue, Happiness, and Effectiveness. It's by Epictetus, and it's Stoic Philosophy. It's a pretty nice little book. I quite like it. And here's this little passage that I wanted to read, I think is relevant. It says, self-mastery depends on self-honesty. Know first who you are and what you're capable of. Just as nothing great is created instantly, the same goes for the perfecting of our talents and aptitudes. We are always learning, always growing. It is right to accept challenges. This is how we progress to the next level of intellectual, physical, or moral development. Still, don't kid yourself. If you try to be something or someone you are not, you belittle your true self and end up not developing in those areas that you would have excelled at quite naturally. Within the divine order, we each have our own special calling. Listen to yours and follow it faithfully. Within the divine order, we each have our own special calling. Listen to yours and follow it faithfully. I could have just read that, right? That kind of sums up this whole thing I've been talking about. It's not just a selfish thing to be yourself, to listen to yourself, to do what feels right for you. It's also how you know your place in what Epictetus is calling the divine calling. You owe it to your kids. You owe it to your family. You owe it to your parents. You owe it to your friends. You owe it to your society. You owe it to the place you were born in to be the best version of yourself. And if that means for a time moving out and living in the woods alone so you can discover yourself, that's what you owe to society, to your family, to your friends, to life, to the force that created you. You're meant to be the best version of you, whatever that is. It may be working in a hospital, or it may be living alone in the woods. I don't know. Nobody can tell you. But I can tell you one thing, the most satisfying and fulfilling life for you is going to be the one that is in the most alignment with your true nature. And I sound like I'm preaching, which doesn't feel very good, but I'm doing this because this is the message I try and remind myself. And it's the thing that I hold on to when I don't get to see my kids very often. I try to remember that me living in my truest expression, my most whole and authentic expression of myself is the best thing that I can do for my kids, because I'm able to live as a role model. I'm able to show them the greatest thing that I desire for them is that they also develop the ability to express their unique characteristics and personality as wholly and as completely as possible. And I guess I'm a little old-fashioned that I think the best way to do that is to role model it. We can talk about it all we want, but when the kids are able to see me living out my truth, I hope that it inspires them as they grow to be able to live out their truth and do so without reservation, wholeheartedly and effectively. If you're just a fat jelly bean laying on a rock, be the best fat jelly bean you can. I'm looking at these seals over here, and they're just like lard torpedoes. They can't hardly even move. They're laying there in the snow. And I don't know, nature does this all the time. That's what is so amazing about being in nature, is everything out here is just being itself. An eagle's not trying to be a seal. A duck's not trying to be a crow. A spruce tree's not trying to be seaweed. They're all just expressing their innate potentiality and characteristics as completely, as purely and wholly as possible. And it's inspiring. And I think that humanity could learn a few things from that. Whether you believe in God or the Big Bang or whatever, I think that we can all agree that everything has a unique expression. And whether it's a snowflake or a forest, there's an authentic version of everything to be expressed. And I think that is the ultimate goal in life for humans, for sea otters and barnacles. And like Epictetus says, within the divine order, we each have our own special calling. Listen to yours and follow it faithfully. So, do whatever it takes. Find out what your divine calling is. You might have to sit in silence. You might have to turn off the TV. You might have to go out in nature. But not doing that is the most dangerous thing you can do for your health and your relationships and your mental health. So there's my warning for the day. And I hope you all have a nice day. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. I hope you'll mention something in the comments that you are feeling inspired by, or some thoughts. And most of all, I just hope that somehow you can be inspired to express yourself as wholly and as completely and authentically as possible, and have the confidence and the courage to push through what feels like obstacles, what feels like things that confine you, people's expectations, your past actions, the circumstance you find yourself in today. Do something small. Take a small step. Do whatever is within reach to find that connection with yourself. This is what I remind myself of as much as I can and encourage myself to do, and it always pays off. The rewards are always there, and I can tell you that one moment of watching my kids just lost in the freedom of being in the wilderness, playing games, building fairy houses, hide and seek, whatever they want to do, just completely immersed in nature. Those are the moments when I realize that overcoming all of the hesitations and obstacles has been worth it. Oh, bon voyage.